paragraph number 4. So, managing and measuring innovation. How do you manage innovation? We've seen in previous class that you have multiple phases to manage or measure. This time we're going to discuss how you're going to manage them. So you will understand the factors that will influence the processes of innovation in your organization, and perhaps more importantly, you're also going to define the routes and routines that accelerate you or bring you in such a mind state or in such an organizational structure that you can actually open up to new forms of innovation in such a way that you can take advantage from new opportunities. Let's start with the management of innovation. As you might have imagined already, that there are, based on your personal preferences on how to cope with change, you can form different profiles on how you manage innovation. So we've posted an interesting overview of the different models. As you see, there is a, they gave each one an interesting name. So for example, you could be a creator, which you will, in this case, be more in the right side of the HBDI profile. You would be creative, you would be on the front side of things, and you will be proactive. You could also be, on the other hand, a defender, for example, defending your turf. That might be more in the green side, in the more structured and the more changeable environment approach. You could be fast follower, where you expand for your goals, etc. So here you see a good mix with the HBDI profile and the different profiles you can have to manage these types of innovation. These types of innovation you can find in the source, so I think you can read them on your own. We've got a summary recap mentioned in the slides, so nothing for me to add there. So let's go on to the next slide, a contingency model. In the contingency model, well, let me rephrase it. The contingency model is all how do you make innovation sustainable within your organization? How are you sure that you keep on innovating, and even if you grow or if you downsize, that you actually can evolve towards that new version of yourself, catching more value. So that depends on multiple things. For example, the sector where you are in, the size of your company, and the last one, let me speak, the scope, of course. So the sector depends whether you are in the technical area or whether you are in the librarian area. One innovation or one sector moves faster than the other sector, as you might have imagined yourself already. The size of the company is very important. Slow, big companies innovate a little bit, are less flexible, and they therefore have a harder time adapting to new types of input, where smaller companies or startups are very flexible and can migrate towards one ID or the other ID. They shift easily from ID to ID. On the other side of that medal, is the resources that big companies have. So sometimes they don't need to switch, they can walk both routes. Remember the previous session where we discussed focus or not, betting on multiple horses. That's a luxury you have when you are a bigger corporation. And another thing that often tends to go into the wrong direction with smaller startups is that they don't manage their resources very well. So they don't extract the maximum value out of their hours or funding or whatever. Sometimes, for example, lack of focus or lack in selection processes, doing too many things. The scope, incremental versus totally disruptive innovation. Also findable in slides. I like this next slide where you see all the lines. I actually did it once myself as well. I invented, or not invented, and this was me plotting my IDs. So I once wrote down what is Koios, question mark, and then noted down like, okay, we want to have digital certificates. We want to create a portfolio tracker for your study records. We want to connect students with etc., etc. We want to bring content. We want to do tokens. And if you do all these things, you will notice that you will have a cluster with things, and that connects with that, and that. And as chaotic as I'm currently drawing it, as chaotic it actually is in field practice. This for me preferably, or this worked for me. This gave me a lot of oversight. The next thing after this phase is that I mapped them and created eventually sort of a priority list. But in other words, this is just another way of plotting your mind into the real world, or making theoretical models more practical. But as mentioned many times before, this is a personal preferences. There are many other models out there, as you will see in the other resources. So how innovation happens in practice? Chaos. Other than that, is it manageable? And for that we need to find the next slide. Of course it's manageable, as you're currently witnessing yourself. If we haven't managed, weren't be able to manage, we couldn't have shoot the videos or find the funding to eventually build the stuff that we're currently building. So other ways to manage it is that there's often an underlying pattern of success, which consists of two things. First of all, what's important, what you need to remember is that it's the allocation of resources. The allocation, so what kind of resources do we have and how are we going to allocate them? A good example, for example, is one of our team members, Ricardo. He is going to create the content for the digital trading miner, but he's also doing the front-end design of the of Koios. He's also currently recording the session. He's also doing many other things. So in the end, we need to pick a route. We need to make a selection, and you can only do one thing at a time. So the resource allocation is just very important, and those are strategic choices you make. Other than that, it's the managing the capabilities of the organization, which sounds similar, but it's the more routine way version of the allocation of resources. So you can do this once, but how do you continuously keep doing this based on new types of information? So building in routines can be done in 4 different types. You can be unaware, you can be reactive, you can be strategic, and you can be creative. The interesting part here is, I'm not going to dodge in any further in this. I would like to challenge you to read up on it, but think about it for yourself. What type of innovation person are you? Are you unaware? Are you reactive, strategic, or creative? And more importantly, are you in the right type where you want to be? And if not, how can you come into the other type? So that's a wrap for now. We will finish now, and let's dive into the next session where we will look at the innovation management combined with distributed ledger technology. So see you in a sec.